Hey, it's Vas here from Metro Hobbies, and today we have a brand new car for you. We have the ARRMA OUTCAST EXB. This is a brand new addition to the ARRMA fleet. So let's take everything out of the box and find out what this truck is all about. Okay, so with everything out of the box, this is what you're going to see. Being that this is a roller, there are no electrics here, which means of course there's no radio. So the truck is fully assembled and ready to go for you to install and finish off the electrics, but you are still going to get a few bits and pieces that you need to use to finish it off. So in here, in one of these bags, you will see the servo saver. Now, they've actually included a couple of different options for the servo saver. I think there's a 17 tooth and a 15 tooth, depending on the type of servo that you're going to install in the truck. So you'll need that. There's also some optional shock pistons if you want to do any tuning on the suspension of the truck, so you can use them as well. And then over here in this big bag, there is some hardware in here, such as screws, there's an antenna tube, there's some washers, some bits and pieces in here. This is for your receiver and receiver box, and this is for your ESC mount. Now, the ESC mount is basically just this flat plate that you see here. It does have a couple of mounting options if you have an ESC that will actually mount to those, and this is essentially the lid. And then in here, these two big pieces, these are kind of the same, but they are a little bit different. And the essential difference between these two is that one of these has a slightly wider area here for a 5th scale servo. This one's a little bit narrower for a 6th scale servo. So if you want to use the servo that comes stock on the ready to run, you can use this one. If you want to use a proper 5th scale one, then you use this box here. So that's everything included in there. So we'll get that out of the way. And then over here we have our two optional motor mounts, and we have a spare spur gear. Now, the motor mounts, the reason why they give you two is because you can still technically use a 6 scale motor, which is the same sort of size motor that comes on the ready to runs. And some of these motors may even have a 5mm shaft still. There's also a 5th scale motor. Now, the 5th scale motor mount, they're exactly the same. The only difference is the spacing of the mounting holes is going to be a little bit different. And a lot of the times these 5th scale motors will come with an 8mm shaft. And then here we have the spare spur gear. Now, this is a 39 tooth spur gear. I believe the stock one is a 46 or 47 from memory. And then you've got some additional hardware, some screws for your motors, and to put all that on there on the actual truck itself. I don't believe that this comes with the actual screws for the motor itself, so you may need to get those separately. Just keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that there are no pinions included with these trucks. So both the OUTCAST EXB as well as the Creighton EXB. In fact, even the 8 scale Creighton EXB don't come with pinions anymore. I believe that the first batch did, but then eventually they stopped putting them in there because people were just choosing their own anyway. So in here we also have a wheel wrench. This of course will allow you to take off the wheels of the cart because this uses, I believe, 24mm hexes. There's also a little tool in here. This is to remove one of the E-clips in the back. I'll show you that a little bit later on as well, which is quite a unique little tool. And then here we have kind of like a little, I suppose like a quick maintenance guide. They call it a technical pack. So this has all the optional pinions that you can get on the back there. And then you open this up and you'll see things like part numbers for shocks, for the diffs, both center and front and rear, sway bar parts here. Everything's got part numbers attached to it as well. And then if you really want to know all your part numbers for everything, you open this guy up and you have a full exploded view of the entire truck here with all part numbers attached. So if you do break something, something pops out, you lose a part, whatever the case may be, you have one of these in your toolbox, and then you'll know exactly what part you need. You can ring up your local hobby shop and go, hey, do you have this part in stock? All right, so the manual itself, and there's also, before we get to the manual, there's also a sticker sheet that they include, which is kind of cool. So you can decorate the truck a little bit more, decorate the toolbox, stick them on the fridge, wherever you want to put those. And then we have the manual. Now, the manual, ARRMA's manuals have always been fairly comprehensive and they've always been very good. So we'll see what this one's like. So in here, I'll flick through very quickly. It basically has a step-by-step guide of how to kind of adjust and pull apart and install all of these little components, what to do, what not to do. There's also information in here about you know, the radio, which is not included, but you know, at least they give you some info there. Motor sizes, what motor mount to use with what, gear meshing, what recommended gearing is. So you've got all of these charts here. There's a lot of useful information in these manuals. I do highly recommend you go through it and you know, familiarize yourself with the truck and what it is that you need to sort of complete it. All right, so now for the main event, the truck itself. And it is an absolutely gorgeous truck. ARRMA have actually done a fantastic job with this EXB Outkast. And just to clarify, for those of you who are a little bit unfamiliar with EXB and what the term actually means and what these trucks are really all about, it's basically an extreme basher. So this is a beefed up version of the Ready to Run, but provided as a roller. For those of you out there who really like to customize their cars and overpower them and do something really crazy, these don't come with any electrics. So you save a little bit of money by not having the electrics, but you do get the additional beefed up components, which we'll talk about in a moment. And that's really what these cars are all about. So the original 8-scale Creighton was the first EXB version that came out from ARRMA. Then they released the 5th-scale Creighton EXB only a few months ago, and now we've got the Outkast EXB, which looks absolutely amazing. So they did a really good job with this truck as well. Now, taking off these body pins, just remember to grab the actual body pin itself and not the little rubber tethers that these come with, because if you do grab and try to pull the pins out with just the little rubber tethers, you will rip them. So just keep that in mind. And we'll get that out of the way. And here is the body itself. Now, this is very much the same as the Ready to Run body. Obviously, it's just in a different color. You have your little skids up the top here to prevent the car from getting wrecked if you do have any rollovers. The roll cage has some of these screws on top there as well. And there's little holes in here which are actually for lighter flints. So if you want to do something really creative, you can buy some lighter flints, pop them in there, and then let the car slide on its roof, and you'll see sparks come out of it, which is the idea which they did on the 8th scale. I think they did it on the 10th scale Outkast as well, and they've done it here as well. And in fact, the Notorious have got that exact same thing. Now, the roll cage is very beefy, and it'll go down into the center here, which has this brace on the inside that actually keys in to the center mount here on the chassis. So if you do have an upside down landing or the car, you know, hit something on the roof, the body's just not going to all of a sudden collapse with the weight of the chassis. It will be protected by this center brace, which I think is really, really cool. So really nice idea there from ARRMA to key that into place. And we'll move the body out of the way and let's talk about the truck itself. So there it is there. There's not much in there at the moment without the electrics. It looks a little bit bare, but that's the whole idea, so that you can actually build this up and make it your own. So I believe the front bumper is very much the same as the stock. I think they may have beefed up this little bracing on the front here. I'm not entirely sure, but that looks very much the same. Shock towers and everything hasn't really changed. The tires, to my knowledge, haven't really changed either. Neither have the wheels. They're all the same. The upper and lower A-arms are all the same as the Ready to Run. And then when we move into the shocks, that's when things start to change up a little bit. So the standard shocks, they have a 5mm shock shaft. These ones have a 6mm shock shaft, so they've beefed them up a little bit. And suspension on this guy feels really nice. For a big, heavy vehicle, I mean, there's nothing in it at the moment. You still got to put your batteries and everything. You can really tell that the suspension is tuned quite nicely. I myself have the 5th scale Creighton, and I can tell you that the suspension tune on that has also been very good. So no doubt the suspension here is actually going to be very nice as well. The bars that you see, the bracing, these are all split into two. Originally they had these as a one piece, but now of course they have them in a two piece to make them a bit stronger. So you have a little one at the back here and a longer one at the front that marries up into the center brace to this tower, and then you have the diagonal ones to prevent the chassis from flexing and bending even more. So this is all braced very strongly, and to my knowledge there hasn't been too many issues with this with these cars since they've updated this bracing system. So very, very good and well done to ARRMA as well. There's also a little tiny brace right at the back here. You'll see just a little tiny brace, if I can get my hand there, just at the back, again to prevent the chassis from flexing or doing anything weird. The chassis itself, speaking of which, is 5mm thick, and it is a 70/75 aluminium. So this thing, given that it's a slightly shorter wheelbase than the Creighton 5th scale, this should give you really nice performance, and it should last you a very long time. I'd be surprised if anybody can actually bend these chassis nowadays with these beefed up, aluminium specs. The turnbuckles have also been well beefed up. So the original ones are actually 6mm. On these EXB cars, they're actually 8mm. So incredibly thick turnbuckles on here as well. Very, very tough. No doubt these things will hold up to a lot of punishment. It should definitely perform quite well. Then you have your two massive battery trays in here. Obviously, this is an 8 scale vehicle for the most part. Some people like to run even 10S or 12S. I've seen some setups out there as well. But 8S should be plenty for you. So these battery trays, which are adjustable, you can make them wider or leave them as standard, but they've actually put some etched some measurements on the actual chassis itself. So if you move the battery trays along, you can actually match them up exactly based on the size of the batteries that you're going to use, which I think is a fantastic little idea. Motor mount, of course, in the center here, and then of course you have your front and rear drive shafts going right through the middle. So that's the overall layout of this car. A very nice little setup, and capable of some amazing power and speeds. This being a shorter chassis than the Creighton 5th scale, it is designed to be more of a stunt truck. So this is going to, pop wheelies and do all sorts of things. Hence the reason why we have a wheelie bar on the back here, which is quite big and beefy. They've also got another wing mount out here, which actually looks really nice and strong. I really like the way that they've designed this wing mount. Hopefully it holds up to some punishment. The spoiler itself even has some screws on top here for those sparks and all that sort of thing to protect the plastic itself. So nice that they've included those in the spoiler as well. And that pretty much wraps this up. There's really not a lot else to talk about here other than just the upgraded components. A lot of what I mentioned on this truck has already been covered off in the regular ready-to-run Outkast unboxing that I did. Very much a lot of what's here is going to be the same as on the Creighton 5th scale EXB as well, with the exception of the tyres, where they actually changed the tyre compound a little bit on that car. But I believe that everything is the same on the Outkast. And this is definitely been doing very well. A very, eagerly anticipated release from ARRMA. A lot of people have been very keen on getting an Outkast so that they can really stunt it up and do some crazy, backflips and so forth without having to worry about, durability issues as much. Okay, so when it comes to finishing off the Outkast EXB, there are a couple of things that you can do. Now, as far as radios go, there are a variety of different options. You can go for something fairly cheap, depending on your budget, or you can go for something where I would recommend at least starting around about the $200 mark. And the 3PV, the Futaba 3PV, is one very good radio. It can hold up to 10 models. It has a removable battery tray, which means you can actually put in rechargeable batteries in here. It has a great feel in the hand, and it has a nice little menu system, so you can adjust endpoints and do sub trims and expos and all that sort of thing. The Spectrum DX5C is also another good option if you want to go and stick with the Spectrum brand. That's also a very nice radio, and I think we've talked about that in previous videos as well. So that's one way to go. Now, as far as servos go, we generally have these two options. We have a non-waterproof one, and we have the waterproof one. So if you're the type of guy that wants to go out there and splash through the odd puddle, maybe go with the waterproof. If you like to keep your cars nice and clean and dry, then obviously the non-waterproof will do the job just fine. So there are your two options here for steering servos. Of course, there is of course the standard ready-to-run steering servo, which I don't have any in here to show you at the moment, but that's a 6 scale, slightly smaller. You can also choose that if you wish. Now, for power combos, we generally stock the Hobby Wing easy run stuff. So this one here is the 1100 kV combo. So this is the Max 6 1100 kV. I actually use this combo in my Creighton ready to run, and it actually works fantastic. This is a slightly revier combo. So if you want something that's going to actually give you a little bit more speed, you don't really want that much torque, then this is probably a nice option for you. It'll work perfectly fine. It does come with an 8mm shaft, and a good option pinion for that is the 29 tooth spool that actually is supplied for the Limitless car. So you can grab that spool and use that as a pinion on this combo to obviously run the truck. So that's one way to go. The other option that we have, which I've currently got in my Creighton, is the Max 5 combo. So that is a much bigger combo, and it's an 800 kV. So the motor is it's about the size of a Coke can. The ESC is a 200 amp ESC as opposed to this one, which is only 160 amps. And for that combo, you kind of need to run almost like a 1-to-1 gear ratio. So you will need to use the optional spur gear that comes in this kit. You'll need to install that, which is the 39 tooth, and then you'll need to get a 39 tooth pinion. Again, you can use the one straight out of the Limitless and run a 1-to-1 gear ratio. And that should give you speeds around about 80-85 kilometers an hour, which will be plenty for these types of vehicles. Of course, that is running on 8S. So there are your power options to finish off these cars. In case anybody's sort of wondering, what you need to get these things going, this is pretty much it. This is what you're going to need. And of course, batteries and charger. Okay, that concludes our video on the ARRMA OUTCAST EXB. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new for more content, of course. And check out the video description. We'll have links in there to the trucks as well as all the other components that I mentioned earlier to finish these off. So if you have any more questions regarding this truck, please be sure to get in contact with us either through here on YouTube or through our website, and we will be more than happy to help you guys out. So thank you all very much again, and I'll be speaking to you next time.
Lower a little. Yeah, okay, struggle.
Struggle! I'm struggling!